Time being 10:30 a.m., February 2nd, 2022, Groundhog's Day. I'd like to call this meeting to order of the Kane County American Rescue Plan Committee. And we have our clerk assisting us via Zoom today. So Jenny, if you could please call the roll.
Bates,
Bates here.
Brown,
Brown here.
Frost,
Frost here.
Gums,
Comes here.
Kenyon,
Here.
Leonard, Martin,
Martin present.
Molina,
Molina present.
Strothman,
present.
Tepe,
Tepe here.
and Sanchez.
Here. We have a quorum. If someone could please ask for unanimous consent to approve the minutes of January 19th, 2022.
Comes so moves.
Everyone moves. I heard Brown. So Brown moves.
Comes a second.
Any disagreement?
Oh.
Hearing none, minutes are approved. Do we have anyone here for public comments? I don't see anyone here in the audience at the county building, but is there anyone online who wishes to address the committee at this time? Okay, we'll move on to chairman's comments. And I am just going to pull something up real quick to look at with you all. As you know, on Monday, the end of day, our community support grant program came to a close. The portal closed. We have received all applications that we're going to get at this point, minus the appeals. And it's very exciting. So just big pat on the back to everybody that's gotten us this far. We're one big step closer to getting some money out into the community, as we've been wanting to do for quite a while now. But I'm going to share my screen. All should have this document. Just briefly go over it. And this is the list, spreadsheet provided by Ernst & Young. So thanks to them for putting this together. That shows all of the categories that are in our grant program, who applied, and the total amounts. Many applicants put in more than was allowable in their category. So we reduced all of those amounts down to their maximum limit. So you all have a copy of this, and you can peruse it in your own time. Remember, this is not anything final. This is only informational, so that if you get calls asking from an applicant in your district asking about their grant, you can at least tell them if they are on the list or not. But it's going to be, we're going to go through a process to determine what the actual award amounts will be for each of these entities. So keep in mind that this is not a final number or representative of what each organization will receive. And you can see at the bottom here, 7.3 million. So we're a little oversubscribed, a $4 million program.
Sure.
So we're going to have some work ahead of us to bring that number down to 4, but it's good to see such good turnout. I would say this is a good turnout. I think we had about 66 applications in total. So again, thank you to everyone who applied, and to everyone that put in work getting this program put together and getting us to this point. Is there any questions, Mr. Frost?
Chairman, I'm just curious. This is really great. Actually, I was afraid it was going to be over 10 million, the total. So we're at 7.345. I guess we talked about this prior, that we allotted 4 million as kind of a first shot grant. But, personally, I don't know if we would have to do this in a second round, or if we could increase the amount available. But, with that fairly modest total, in my opinion, I would like to try and fund, everything that's a reasonable ask, even if we have to up the amount. So I guess you'd mentioned working to bring that number down to 4. I'd rather bring the 4 up to 7.345.
I agree with that. Gums.
I'll second that emotion.
Strathman too.
Just a thought. So.
Okay, well, increasing the grant amount at today's meeting at the very least is not something that we could do, but I'll follow up with committee members and see if that's something we would really like to pursue based on the numbers we're seeing right now, and what procedure we might have to undergo to do that. But otherwise, as it stands right now, we're planning to go through our process in such a way so that we will have the initial award agreements at the March County Board. So fingers crossed and that's our goal. And I think it's very achievable. So we'll have to follow up on this idea of potentially increasing the limit.
Yeah, because as I mentioned last meeting, you know, the 4 million was intended to be, you know, to get some money out the door quickly. But it was always my impression and recollection that we were going to come back with another round or something. So if we could do it all at once, great. If not, I would support a second round to follow on to the 4 million.
Mr. Chairman, Bates, please.
Hold on, Ms. Bates.
Ms. Bates, it's Corinne. Just give me a second. If you take a look, if I may, mental health and homeless shelters, that comes just about at 4 million. So if the board would approve moving forward to food pantries and other primary mission, that would be the additional amounts that could possibly be funded, which would wholly fund, I mean, almost wholly fund, the first
No, holy fun.
first two categories.
Could you explain that a little bit more, please?
Oh,
What you're looking?
I'm just looking at the spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Ms. Bates. I'm sorry, it does extend it out because no, 4 million. So we've got the 2 million for mental health category number 1, which is done. And then we have the 2.6 million request for mental health on the second category. And we have $2 million left over, correct? So we need an additional $3+ million to satisfy all of this, 3.5 maybe? Yeah, 3.5. So even if you were to fund fully one of these to Mr. Frost's point, at least that money would be wholly out the door if the board approves and agrees to the additional 3.5 million out to the community.
Yeah, and I'll have to consult with the state's attorney to see if that's the direction we want to move into, what the process would be. Just thinking off the top of my head, it might delay us a month if we have to get county board approval first to increase the amount, and then we can go through the process of the award. So, but yeah, I'll follow up with everyone very shortly after this meeting in the next couple of days, and we'll get to the bottom of this idea and see what we can do and get creative. I like the idea personally of increasing the amount, so I'm with you guys that agree with that. Mr. Brown?
Thank you. This is Brown speaking. I think something that we need to consider, and I'm not disagreeing with Mr. Franz's proposal, but something that we might need to consider is that there's other agencies that may have attempted to put in an application, but didn't fully meet the requirements, the way the requirements are written, so they didn't further their application. Or there may be some that did that are now going to file an appeal. So to say that we would just go ahead and increase the dollar amount to fund all these ones that do meet the program as intended and exclude these others that really maybe do meet to some extent the program. I mean, for example, I've gotten a couple emails from agencies that do their own thing and help collect food to donate to food pantries. So they're indeed assisting in the food pantry operation, but they're not a 501c3 or they don't meet the goal of the plan. So to exclude all these people at this point and just go ahead and fund all these, I don't know where to go with that. I think maybe, in my opinion, a round 2, and think a little bit deeper, just like when the CARES Act, and I wasn't here during that time, but listening to all the meetings, you know, you don't know what you don't know until you don't know it. And there's other agencies that maybe should be as entitled to the funding as some of these agencies. We just didn't write the program that way.
Well, and this is John Martin. May I speak?
Go ahead, Mr. Martin.
This is a raw list at this point in time, is it not? I mean, these are being, am I correct? These are being vetted by the state's attorney's office?
They're being reviewed by Ernst & Young at this point.
And
right
Ernst
now.
and Young. So, I think we have everybody's intent, but let's know that we have this number. To Mr. Brown's point, let's know that this number is in fact accurate before we make a decision to disperse more money or add groups to the list.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. And another thing to consider as well, because these are all undergoing the review process, while some are completed, some are not. And just by taking a look at the applications in the portal, and from my understanding, some of the applicants may not have a primary mission that falls within this grant program and may be put into kind of a questionable pile for us to consider, while other applicants are clearly qualified for this grant. So just another aspect to consider in making a change, that and the fact that this list is not final. Ms. Bates, did you still have a comment?
Yes, so you rounded down all of the requests that were too big to 100,000. Do we have a total before they were rounded down?
Yeah, I think it was somewhere around 35 million.
Okay, thank you. I mean, that does give us a target of what our community needs are out there. And so I have a comment that I can't wait to say, so I'm going to say it now. And that's, I was talking to Gateway's representative, and they said that Kane County is way, way ahead of 10 other counties in what we're doing with the art money. So I wanted to make us feel better. Way, way ahead.
It's good to hear that. Thanks for sharing, Ms. Bates. Ms.
welcome.
Molina, I see that your hand is raised on Zoom. Did you have a question or a comment?
I did. Thank you, Chairman. I guess first my comment is similar to what Mr. Martin said and Ms. Bates alluded to. This gives us a snapshot of where our county is and where the needs are in mental health and homeless shelters and food pantries. It also gives us an idea of how many people are out there trying to meet this need, and all the organizations that are working to try to help our fellow constituents. So I'm glad that we were able to look at this. And my second comment is, let's just take a deep breath and go through all of these and make sure that they do meet the requirements that we set forth. And those that don't, let's revisit and find out what requirements they do meet and what needs they do have. And there might be other programs that we can kind of help them go towards if it's not something that the county can help, but at least highlight the services for the county. Thank you, and sorry about Capitan.
That's okay. Thank you, Ms. Molina. Mr. Tebby, I see your hand raised as well.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Will we have the opportunity to review these individual applications?
Yes, we have an internal SharePoint site that has been developed, and all of the documentation from each application will be put onto the SharePoint site very soon. And a summary document will be provided as well. So yes, everyone will have access to the full amount of information that we have received.
And the definition of very soon?
Looking at Peter.
I believe that, excuse me, I was writing a note. I believe that IDT or IT, as of communication this morning, should be resending the emails for the Microsoft account, user accounts should be going out this afternoon, start this afternoon, I would think. So once you're able to log in with those credentials, the site is loaded.
I think his main question was, when will all of the
The
supporting
applications,
documentation from the application?
we're going to start
be on
working
there?
on that this afternoon.
Okay.
And I will just get with you to determine whether you want them bulk loaded or loaded as we download per applicant.
Yeah, so Vern, I don't have a definite answer, but very soon, and everyone will be notified immediately once it is available.
I understand. I just think it's important that we also review these applications. And then my additional question is, there was a special agreement, let's say, made in the mental health area for the $2 million. And I would urge that we look at distributing those funds as soon as possible.
Yes, and one of the resolutions on today's agenda speaks to that, Mr. Tepe.
Good.
Mr. Chairman, Allen,
Ms. Allen, go ahead.
I'm sorry for barging in. I'm not on your committee, but I just wanted to say what has been alluded to. The definition of mental health is a large one. And as we have discussed earlier this year, we feel that our own forest preserve has made a substantial contribution towards people's mental health. I'm guessing that some of the entities that sent in applications here are in that larger definition of mental health. And I'm wondering if maybe maybe the committee would want to consider a round two where other entities could fall into that also. I'm thinking of the Geneva History Society. I'm thinking Elgin has also a history society. I'm going to guess there's a large range of public services that would also fall into that. And if we're going to include some, maybe we could let everyone apply and do a round two. Thank you for letting me talk.
Anytime, Miss Allen. As always, for all board members, we always welcome you to come and ask questions and give your input. So anyone else that has a question or a comment? Okay, we'll move on. Madam Chair, go ahead.
I'm reflecting on Mr. Brown's comment. Being a registered 501c3 means that you're able to accept charitable funds. If you're not a registered 501c3, it's like a business license, you can give private money to anybody you so choose, but it's a private contribution. I may be wrong, but I don't believe that as a government entity, we can give money to support a private individual, even no matter how well they may be, their intent for philanthropy. They need to have that business license, that sanction that they are registered with the Attorney General.
Good point.
Okay, if there are no other questions or comments, we'll move on to the next section.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Bates, go ahead.
I just want to say that I think this is a great list and that we did get a good response from the community, it looks like.
I was a little nervous the last time we were here. We didn't have quite so many. I think the last day we received 20 plus applications just in the last day. So yeah, good turnout, I would say, and looking forward to getting this money out as quickly as possible.
Never do today what you can put off till tomorrow.
Absolutely. All right, discussion items.
You'll never get done. Don't move along.
Yeah. Program manager update. Peter, they're getting the weekly updates. Do you have anything to add on top of that at this point today?
Not on top of the updates, no.
All right, let's move on to the next section, appeals. This is where I'm going to need some input from the committee. So hopefully you've all taken the time to look at the document that was sent out. At the time of the agenda being put together, we had 5 appeals. And I'm just going to go through them one at a time, and we'll do just a quick roll call for consensus to either approve these appeals, to allow them to apply for our program, or to deny these appeals. So just keep that in mind. We kept the program somewhat simple in our definitions and our categories. So mental behavioral health, food pantries, homeless shelters. As we started going into this, we realized these categories can become quite nebulous and contain a lot of different secondary types of operations that are similar in intent, but different in operation. So we have homeless shelters, but we also have places that will help provide some kind of overnight stay or a temporary situation for people, or help them to get into housing, different kinds of things related to housing and houselessness, but not an actual shelter. So with our program, we tried to keep it very narrow, knowing that the further we go out from these narrow definitions, the more difficult it gets to vet applications, the longer it takes to create the parameters required, the documentation that we'll need from various types of organizations. So with that in mind, we know there's going to be some organizations we still would like to include, even if they fall a little bit outside of our well-defined definitions. So I just wanted to start with that context so that you all understand why we're even considering these potential applicants today. So I'm going to start with the first one, the Alive Center. They would qualify, if approved, they would be under the Mental Health 2 section. What they're asking money for is an existing program. And so if you recall, this is the Teen Center in Aurora, and they promote mental health through social interaction and activities. So they're not providing direct mental health services, but their belief is that by providing this space for teenagers, it is helping improve the mental health of these individuals. I can put more of this on the screen. They follow the youth mental health first aid practices, which is a nationally recognized standard that outlines protective factors that teenagers need to have good mental health. And this organization, the Alive Center, is claiming that their work provides 11 out of the 15 protective factors that you look for teenage mental health. So that's just a quick summary of this organization. Are there any questions or comments, Mr. Frost?
If possible, I know it's not on here, but if possible, as we go through these, could you or somebody from staff tell us what their ask was?
So we don't have a number,
Okay.
simply because they get into the portal, they answer the question, what do you have other primary mission? And once that happens, they're in the rejection, the denial pile. So we
Okay.
don't know anything else beyond that.
Okay, well, that said, this one seems like an organization that would be doing something good for the community in these times, and I would support this one.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Kenyon?
It seems like this one is much like the Boys and Girls Club, an after-school activity, bringing young people together and continuing. I think it's good.
I would,
Building a basis, it'll be lasting influence.
Bates,
Mr.
please.
Brown? And then Bates?
Brown speaking. I agree with both the comments made so far. However, this kind of goes back to my earlier comment that I maybe didn't explain very well. This is an organization that does very, very good things, but they didn't meet all the requirements of the plan. And as Jarrett and I and Peter and Ernst & Young were working on some of these things, my idea to this was, well, let's have these people that don't really meet the full intent of the plan apply. Because if we don't have enough applicants to use up the full $4 million, certainly they would be a great consideration. But because we've got well over the $4 million of an ask, this kind of goes back to where I'm thinking, because they didn't fully meet the intent of the plan, maybe they should not be awarded at this time and be considered for how we would structure round 2, if there is a round 2.
Any other questions or comments?
Yes.
Melina with a question.
Go ahead, Melina. Oh, sorry, Bates
Um,
was next, but I'll come to you after,
Okay.
Miss Molina.
Yeah, I'd
Sorry.
like to hear Ms. Molina's
Oh,
question.
sure. Okay, Miss Molina, go ahead.
I guess my question is what, when they were asked what their mission is, what were their other answers to it? Why wouldn't they fall into, why were they automatically denied into the portal?
Because the definition that we agreed upon for the behavioral and mental health categories was providing services, like counseling services and things like that. Again, to keep it to a narrow focus initially, because it can get quite nebulous once you go outside of that definition. So that's why all of these applicants were denied essentially in the screening questions, because their primary mission isn't, mental health services. So even though it's related to mental health, it's still technically outside of our definition.
So we should change our definition of what mental health services is, as Ms. Allen mentioned. I'm in agreement with allowing them to submit their application. Thank you.
Ms. Bates?
Yes, I believe that this is very close to what we need for mental health services. I would like to approve this appeal. And yet Mr. Brown is making such good points that maybe, I'm thinking of things like park districts or our children's sci-tech museum. Some of those are very important to the community, and it didn't, we with this grant, we started out with pretty narrow criteria. So I'd like to let this one be approved though. And I agree with Mr. Brown that maybe our second pass needs a new set of criteria. Thanks, that's
Thank
it.
you, Ms. Bates.
I-
Mr.
I have
Tepe.
I have a comment, Mr. John Martin. May I speak?
Go ahead, Mr. Martin, and then Mr. Tepe.
I think I'm continuing with Mr. Brown's thought here, but as I look at this, we established criteria and a dollar amount. And what we know is we have more demand placed upon the dollar amount that this committee and the board have agreed upon than we have money to disperse under the agreement. And I think this is not the time, in my mind, and I'm going to guess that every one of these are going to be people that offer merit, that are offering valuable services, et cetera, et cetera. But going back to the starting point, we established criteria and we already have more demand using those criteria. Now, if we expand them, what are we going to do? We don't know if we're going to increase it. If we don't increase it, are we going to dilute the people that clearly applied? I think that they ought to be kept in reserve, and we ought to, when we look at step 2, look at it and see what we want to do. But I'm going to guarantee you that if we go through these, everybody's going to believe that they perform services that are of merit. I think we need to stick to the rules we established. And when we know that we have how much money we have left in that pot, if any, and we won't have any left, then we look to how much we want to expand and go to other uses. But I will be opposed to granting any of the appeals at this point in time if they're all premised upon the fact that they didn't meet the narrow requirements, because I want that to be the second discussion, I don't want the first discussion blurred.
Thank you, Mr. Martin.
Good
Mr.
point.
Tepe. Mr. Tepe, you have your hand raised. Maybe it was still up from earlier.
Good point, Mr. Martin.
Mr. Kenyon?
I would agree with
I'm
Mr.
sorry, I was
Martin.
on mute. Yes,
I
yes, I
would
do.
agree with that. We could put it in a pending pile, but don't try to. We can't keep changing the goal line. Can't be moving it all the time or we'll never get done.
Well, I would like to remind the committee that this appeals process has been a part of our discussions for this program for quite some time. And
Why didn't they meet the criteria? Are they not a 501c3?
No, it's the primary mission. If they're not a 501c3, we're not even going to entertain it. It's entities whose primary mission are somewhat secondary in our categories. But just to remind everybody, this is the process that we have all been discussing. If we were to put these appeals to the side and wait, that would push us back at least by another month in terms of getting money out, because we have to have all applications in first, and then we have to go through the process of creating the award amounts and agreeing upon those, and then sending that to the full county board. So just some more context for everybody to
Mr.
remember.
Chair, I would suggest, Brown speaking, I would suggest rather than delaying the process, if these appeals are not granted here today, that they just be denied. And obviously, the program manager could let these applicants know that we're going to possibly have some consideration for a round 2, at which time maybe that program would be structured such that would allow this type of an applicant to be successful.
Yeah, if an organization's appeal is denied by this committee, they will be notified today that action happened. And I think that's a good idea, that perhaps, there may be future funding, but if they are approved, then they will also be contacted and instructed to put their application in immediately. so that we can have everything reviewed by Ernst and Young and go through our process. Mr. Tepe?
Yes, sorry, I kept myself muted. I want to agree with Mr. Martin and Mr. Brown. We are oversubscribed. And although I have no doubt that this organization and other organizations like them really provide decent and valuable services to the community, we need to deal with the ones that are providing the primary services first. And so I would agree with Mr. Martin, and I would probably deny almost all of these applications. So thank you.
All right, we'll get to the roll call in a moment. Is there any other questions, comments, or concerns? Mr. Frost?
Yeah, I guess I'm somewhat disagreeing. You know, we have an appeals process, and staff is going to look to this committee for direction. The only action we could take, I guess, is what Mr. Brown says, which is to deny them all. But if not, you know, I have no problem in doing a kind of a lightning round review. For example, I think there's a day and night difference between the first appeal and the second one. So
Yeah, I would agree. They're not all necessarily ones that we would want to approve, but in the end, this is the process that we've established. So
Could we go through all the appeals? And,
yes, we're going to go one by one, Ms. Bates.
but I don't want to vote on each one, on them until we've gone through all of them.
Why is that?
So that we can look at them together.
If that is what the committee would prefer, I think it would be a little cleaner if we just do it one by one. Mr. Kenyon?
Question, how many appeals do we have?
5.
I think if we heard them all, and then we went back and voted on each one, it might make more sense.
Fine. I agree.
We might say 2 or 3.
All right, well, okay, so then let's do that.
Maybe if you have a good idea.
Well, what do you know?
You hear that? Kenyon
Yep.
gave you a compliment.
Woohoo.
It's the storm. It's getting to him. All right, so we went over the first one, the Alive Center. So you have your thoughts on that. Next one, Fine Line Creative Arts. They would be under mental health category 2. I mistakenly have new program here, what they would be asking money for, but it's actually an existing organization. They are an art school and gallery. Their argument is that the arts in general improves mental health amongst the population. They do have classes and workshops. They charge for those. I'm not exactly sure what their request would be for as far as what they would be wanting to cover. But it is a little different than some of our other applicants in that they do have classes and workshops that they charge for. So that's all I know. Any questions, Mr. Frost?
yeah, I'm very familiar with this facility. It's out in the country in St. Charles Township, and I would have concerns with this one because if we open it up to anybody that provides art classes or anything related to art, I think it's going to be a can of worms. So I would oppose this one. Fine organization, but a pretty tenuous connection to mental health.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Bates?
I think this is a good example of how the Alive Center has laid out mental health priorities for youth, whereas Fine Line, their priority is art classes. It doesn't seem to be up in the same echelon.
Thank you, Ms. Bates. Madam Chair?
I am also familiar with the Fine Line and why they do art classes. They also do support the work of professional artists through gallery showings. They also have a summer class that they do for students, bringing them in. So it's not just art making, although that's certainly part of that process. It's encouragement in art profession. And I don't think art therapy, but working with art can be highly therapeutic, anecdotally, whether or not you're successful at that craft or not. Just very much like gardening, I would say for me, very similar to that. But I would agree, I don't see how this would align with anything we're exactly doing at this point.
Agreed.
Okay, any other questions or comments before I move to the next one? All right, so we have the third one, the International Progressive Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. They would apply under mental health too. They're asking for money for a new program to implement a mental health program for women of color in our local workforce, utilizing an app, a phone-based app, to improve mental and physical health. I believe they have somebody, a public health dietitian who has designed the app, and they're seeking the full $100,000 to implement this program and to administer it as well. Any thoughts, questions on this one? Mr. Brown?
Just a quick thought on this one, with this being a new program and they're asking for the full $100,000. As we've all talked about, the program is over budget already. The $4 million, we're way over that. So should this one be considered and designated as a yes, when we start whittling down who's going to get what out of the $4 million, I'm just guessing maybe this one would get, I don't know, $12,000. So would that be accomplishing what it is that they're asking for, or would it not even work at that point?
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. In the mental health 2 category, because we are oversubscribed, no one will receive $100,000
Right.
total. Mr. Frost?
I don't know if it says somewhere else, maybe in their application, but I would want to know if they were in fact a 501c3, and if in fact, or if they were involved in, political activities, things like that, it would negate them from this. But, the program sounds great, but I would need to know more about the organization and other things they are involved with.
Bates, please.
Go ahead, Ms. Bates.
Do we have a preference, a criteria for a new program over an existing program? Does that matter to us right now? Do we define that?
Well, the reason I included that information is simply because if something is already established or existing, there's going to be some proof of concept there.
Yeah.
Whereas if they want to start a new program, that comes with a certain level of additional risk and uncertainty. And I just think that at the very least, that is an important distinction to make, whether or not it's new or existing.
Okay, good answer.
Madam Chair.
So that would make this less likely to pass, less likely to be approved, because it doesn't even exist yet. So there's more risk of whether it would succeed or not.
That's one way.
Molina?
You can look at it, yes. Madam Chair, and then Melina.
Thank you. I'm just following up on whether or not it's a 501c3. Most chambers are membership organizations, not charitable organizations. So I would question, it's a 501 something.
C4 maybe.
So it's not considered a charitable organization. They may have a charitable wing that they have set up, but if it's the major organization, prime organization, most likely it's not.
So, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, that's the difference between a nonprofit and a not-for-profit, right? A not-for-profit can be
Both
membership-based.
are exactly the same,
Okay.
but it's just a different valuing
Okay.
from the Attorney General.
Yeah, good point. Ms. Molina?
Thank you. I just wanted to comment, just reading over their proposal. I think this is one of the things that as a committee, the feedback we're going to receive from our community members is this is highlighting a direct need that this organization saw for our Latinx, especially population here in Kane County. And I will vote with the committee on whether or not they feel that this is applies to this particular grant. But I think, again, this highlights the need that this organization has seen, and that I think as a county board, we should discuss, and if not fund this particular need, kind of talk about it with our public health department to see how we can help this organization and either assist them or mimic something similar that our county deserves. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Molina. Very good point. Okay, any other questions? Mr. Kenyon?
We see a lot of similar goals. So if we give each one $1.50, maybe we put all of our money in one organization and they could take care of the problem. Does that make any sense to you?
In a perfect world, yes.
Yes. Well, we have to consolidate. And then that'll be good for the leadership, their leadership too.
I would agree.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, let's move on to our fourth appeal. Coming from Just Food Initiative. They would apply under the food pantry category. They are an existing operation. So this one's a little different. This one is kind of an appeal to open our food pantry category up to a much wider qualification. And, they talk about organizations that grow food, that teach people how to grow food, that are out there, doing farmers markets and things like that. And again, this gets back to my point, when we were putting this program together and looking at these kinds of things, it was very clear that once we start moving outside of the tight definitions that we had, it gets very difficult to define exactly what we would allow, what we wouldn't allow, and to do a survey of the whole category of food access is difficult and not exactly something that can be accomplished in the timeline we were looking for. So just keep that in mind. This appeal is kind of a little different, but that being said, to me, it's sort of the squeaky wheel gets the grease. Since they did approach us, is this something the committee would want to allow them to apply for? It was, again, we weren't going to go back and open up the categories to a much broader definition, simply because it would have taken much longer for this program to get put together. So any questions or comments on this particular appeal, Mr. Kenyon?
I think our development department works with organizations like this with grant money that they've taken in. And I think this goes beyond what we want to do. Not that it isn't a good idea, but we only have so much money.
And for the record, I am fully in support of funding these types of organizations and efforts. I think local food is a hugely important issue, but I also see that we do have a program and our appeals process is here to consider.
That the development department
Yes.
does,
Yeah.
and we should send that to them, let them help.
Yes,
I think that organization's out of Batavia.
They are.
No, well, or maybe Aurora, but I know the founder may I speak, Mr. Chair?
Yes, Ms. Bates.
I've known this founder for many years. She does have she came to the Green Fest for a lot of years. So I think I spoke to you about this group before, and I told her that because the 4 million was supposed to go to emergency situations in the county, and so she's not a food pantry. And so I believe this doesn't fit our criteria of emergency situations.
Back to Ms. Molina's comment about the previous applicant or the previous appeal. I do think at the very least, this highlights and outlines a need that is in our community, in our county, and one that is very important. Any other questions or comments, Madam Chair?
If I may, I'd like to just go back, so it's on the record for the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. They're a C6, not a C3.
What does that mean, Madam Chair?
I can send you the link offline.
I know C4s can have a political PAC.
But this is not a C4. This is a membership organization.
Okay.
And they're under different kind of restrictions. It is a not-for-profit, but it's not a charitable organization.
So this would not be eligible based on that.
That is my belief.
Based on the criteria we have established through resolution for this program, the C6 now are eligible under the final rule guidance. Is that correct, Mr. Phillips?
C19s.
Oh, C19.
C19s are, but
Okay.
to follow on what Madam Chair just stated, Gary Ernst & Young just sent me a text and he said on their application, they are not listed as a 501c3, so they didn't claim to be.
Okay,
So-
yeah, I mean, that kind of says a lot right there. So, but again, just highlighting a need that is out there that is very critical. If I could give $4 million just to this issue alone, I would. So I'll move on to the next one. Vna Healthcare, we're all familiar with them. They do have an application in for mental health, for the mental health work that they do. And so this is a separate request. It would go under the food pantry category, an existing program. This is something that I've been aware of, I think from Agriculture Committee and quite possibly under Public Health Committee. This is a food program, Fresh First, where they provide fresh produce. It's a produce box program, fruits and vegetable prescriptions for chronic disease patients. So you have doctors participating in this program with their patients, and they give them a prescription. Like, here, we're going to sign you up, and you're going to get, you know, a bunch of vegetables and fruits and things that maybe you weren't eating before, and some tips on how to cook them. And last I remember, they were also utilizing local farmers. Mr. Kenyon, if you know, or if Michael Isaacson is on, if he recalls, if they're if they've been utilizing local farmers or not, but that was at least originally something that they were doing.
Here we are again. Everybody wants to do, the food pantries do a wonderful job of this. So let the food pantries do this. They can work with the food pantries. I would say Mr. Shepro, his wife got him into buying this, and they love this food because it's fresh. And but we can't turn this over to the food pantries.
Thank you, Mr. Kenny. Mr. Frost?
I guess my thought, I'm looking at the third to the last paragraph, and they do provide a weekly box of fresh produce to people through a program, so to me, that's distributing food to needy individuals. So I would support this.
Gums,
Gums, go ahead.
Thanks. I think I've said it before a couple times, but I like this program. They touch so many lives on a daily basis, and food insecurity is incredibly intrinsically connected to mental health. It is such a complex situation, but that food insecurity, not being able to know if you're going to make dinner for your family tonight, can directly affect the mental health. So I would support this program 100%.
Bates, please.
Bates, go ahead.
Me too.
Madam Chair?
Yes, I'm not disagreeing with what Ms. Gums said. We all agree with that. Being hungry, I've faced 24 hangry board members if the meetings last too long. But this says for people who need fresh vegetables, who are prescribed program. So this is not feeding a family. This is a prescription geared towards an individual. It says a group of 150 patients who may have diabetes or other health-related issues where they are learning to eat. So this is not a food pantry which serves an entire family and reaches out to them. This is a prescription-based program for 150 patients, all worthy, probably all needed, all necessary. Sounds great. But this is not a food pantry. I'm just clarifying that.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Brown?
I agree with Madam Chair on this one. And I think we're just, again, reaching outside what the program was designed for. All great initiatives, all great ideas. But if we were going to approve this one, as Madam Chair just mentioned, it says in the one paragraph here, fresh produce, thus reducing their risk for uncontrolled diabetes. The application before this, the food that they would be working with would be given to the Fox Valley Food for Health program. I'm very familiar with that program, and that's a great program. I mean, it's absolutely wonderful. But if we were to approve this one, then why wouldn't we approve that one? So
I understand now. I thank you for the clarification, Madam Chair. And I would agree with you now.
Important distinctions, absolutely. Any other questions or comments on this specific one before we go through the roll on these? Okay, so let's.
I'd like, this is John Martin, if I could make a comment before the roll. This discussion, at least in my mind, has proved the point that Mr. Brown made and that I attempted to build on, and that's that I think with the exception of one of these, the consensus is that these are all, we can understand and kind of concur in the benefit that these would provide. But we are oversubscribed as we sit. And the reason that we established the standards we did was because, I mean, nothing in this world is black and white, but they were standards that were as close to black and white as we can put together. Every time we open the door here for moving beyond those strict standards, we open the door toward what Dave just said. How many other organizations could come in under what we've now done to expand the size of our umbrella? So I don't mean this to sound harsh. I just mean it to recognize the fact that no matter what we do, we're going to have more demand than we have funds. And we need to protect the integrity of the process if we're going to be successful in its administration. So, end of speech.
Thank you, Mr. Martin.
Bates, please.
Ms. Bates?
This board and this committee are so interesting because I tend to agree with everybody, even when they're not agreeing with each other. But I also would like to thank Madam Chair for the explanation about the food pantries. And I have to agree that we're just going to go off into the woods, into the weeds, if we start approving everything that we would like to approve. Thank you.
Mr. Frost?
Yeah, Fraz speaking. I'm kind of a stickler. I hate leaving meetings without staff and consultants not having guidance. We have an appeals process. So if we don't make some kind of recommendation, it sounds like we're 5 minutes from having that. If we don't make some recommendation, we leave our staff and our consultants scratching their head on what do I do with these appeals. So we're 90% through it. I think we should take a roll call on each of these 5, vote yes or no, and leave it at that. And staff has something to work with.
I would agree with you, Mr. Frost. It's a little late for us to change what our process is going to be for this. I do appreciate everyone's comments in all respects around this topic. That being said, Jenny, if you could please call the roll. We're going to take them one at a time. The first appeal being the Alive Center. That's the teen center in Aurora. So yes, they can apply. No, they are denied.
Bates,
Yes.
Brown,
No.
Frost,
Yes.
Gums,
Gums, yes.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Leonard, Martin,
No.
Molina,
Molina, yes.
Strothman,
Strathman, yes.
Tepe,
No.
and Sanchez.
Sanchez, yes.
Motion carried 7-3.
Okay, the next one, the Fine Line Creative Arts. That is the art school and gallery. Jenny, go ahead and call the roll.
The next one's Fine Line.
Yes.
Okay. Bates,
No.
Brown,
No.
Frost,
No.
Gums,
Gums, no.
Kenyon,
No.
Leonard, absent. Martin,
Martin, no.
Molina,
Molina, yes.
Strothman,
Strathman, no.
Tepe,
No.
and Sanchez.
Sanchez, no.
Motion failed 1-9.
The next one, International Progressive Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. Go ahead, call
Mr.
the
Chair,
roll. Ms. Bates?
can we just eliminate that automatically because it's not a 501c3
Yes,
and
good
not?
point. And I was slowly coming to that realization as I was calling for this. So
Okay.
I think that would be appropriate since they don't qualify in the biggest component of this program as a requirement. So we'll move on to the Just Food Initiative. And this was a simple appeal. Again, I don't even know that this is one that we really need to vote upon unless the committee would like to, because they weren't even asking for money. They just wanted us to expand a category.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Chair,
Tepe, go ahead.
just a procedural question. I think it would be appropriate that we vote on these because of the appeal, regardless of their status.
I would agree.
That would be cleaner.
I would agree.
I can see that point.
That's clean and neat.
Clean and neat. All right, well then we'll vote on the third one. Let me read it again. The International Progressive Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. So go ahead, Jenny, and call the roll.
Okay. Bates,
No.
Brown,
No.
Froz,
No.
Gums,
Gums, no.
Kenyon,
No.
Leonard, absent. Martin,
Martin, no.
Molina,
Molina, yes.
Strothman,
No.
Tepe,
No.
and Sanchez.
Sanchez, no.
Motion failed 1-9.
The next one, the Just Food Initiative. Go ahead and call the roll, please.
Bates,
No.
Brown,
No.
Froz,
No.
Gums,
Gums, no.
Kenyon,
No.
Leonard, Martin,
Martin, no.
Molina,
Molina, yes.
Strothman,
No.
Tepe,
No.
and Sanchez.
Sanchez, no.
Motion is 1-9.
And for the final one, Vna Healthcare box program. Go ahead and call the roll, please, Jenny.
Bates,
Yes.
Brown,
No.
Froz,
Raz, yes.
Gums,
Gums, yes.
Kenyon,
No.
Leonard, absent. Martin,
No.
Molina,
Molina, yes.
Strothman,
Strathman, no.
Tepe,
Happy, no.
and Sanchez.
Sanchez, no.
Motion failed 4-6.
Hey, thank you everyone for going through this process with us. We may receive appeals. There is an appeal window open for 15 days after a denial notice. So going from January 31st, February 15th is our final date. We will be following up with anyone who was denied outside of these appeals that we received and encourage them to get their appeal in very quickly if that is what they so choose, so that at our next meeting, we can get that taken care of. And
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Comment, question maybe. I'm wondering if, as we've all talked about, this program's been over applied for dollar wise. So as we, as a committee, consider what applicants are going to be allowed, how much money, I'm wondering if we, in that report, if it couldn't identify any of these that were an appeal that got approved, so that we can consider whether or not they fully met the program requirements when we start talking about how much money everybody's going to get.
yeah, we can designate that in some way when we put together the information. Mhm. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Let us move on to the FEMA update. At the last meeting, the committee gave direction to pursue FEMA to whatever degree possible. And we went down that road and some discoveries were made in relation to our reporting. So I know all members of this committee were contacted. We had a decision to make. We had different opinions, one coming from our state's attorney's office and one coming from our consultant firm. And I think the committee certainly wanted to go in a certain direction, but the state's attorney's office came back to us and really made clear the reason why we should consider their legal opinion. And the report was due Monday. We had to make a decision. And as much as we wanted to follow the recommendations from our consultant in talking more with the state's attorney's office, we realized that it was really in our best interest to go with their advice. Not the answer that we all were looking for. myself included. But I think given all the information, that was the right call to make at this time. So the report, is it in, Mr. Phillips? Did it get fixed? Okay, so we have everything ready for the report to be submitted, and when submitting the report, probably take 10 minutes, just inputting some data into a few fields. When Mr. Phillips was getting into the Treasury system over a week ago, there were some authentication issues that are still being resolved by the Treasury, and it's not exclusive to Kane County. There are other applicants that are having the exact same technical problem coming from their software. So we have it all documented that we have an extension. So once the technology is fixed on the Treasury side, we'll be notified immediately and we'll be submitting that as well. So while technically we haven't submitted our report, we are in line.
Just
Phillips,
clarification, the technical issue is not Treasury's, it's a third-party vendor.
Right,
there.
right.
So,
Yeah, I'm blaming the Treasury.
and I have printed out, and actually you have an electronic copy if anyone's interested in just the listing of the case numbers that they provided. Treasury has provided us to track this. I have that available.
Yeah, so if anyone wants that, just for their own peace of mind, but otherwise, we're in a good position for our reporting, so everything is good on that front. Are there any questions on that portion? Oh, I should say, sorry, Ernst & Young was asked to go through our department requests to look for ones that are FEMA eligible. They did that. What they came back with was not many of our department requests would be eligible under FEMA. There were a couple that were a maybe, and we require a little more documentation to really make that determination. But at this time, as far as department requests are concerned, anything related to public health minus contact tracing would be eligible, but everything else for the most part is not FEMA eligible. So that $49 million we were looking at is still pretty close to that number with FEMA. There are other expenses though, where we have been using ARP money and will use ARP money that can be reimbursed through FEMA. So we are going to be going through the process, putting out the RFP and having Kane County submit for reimbursement under the FEMA. And with our reporting, there were some things that we wanted to hold off on in anticipation of FEMA reimbursement. But we've talked with Joe Onzik, and we do have a plan on the accounting side for the county where we can move some things around appropriately, and that should help us in our FEMA application. Because once you report something under ARPA, it makes it very difficult to ask for that money under another program. So we have to be able to show that on our end, on our books and accounting, that we've actually taken that money back and put it into the ARPA and then used other money to fund the VAC site, for instance. So that plan is underway to get us in a position to be able to apply for FEMA and fingers crossed get full reimbursement for all the things we're eligible for. Mr. Frost.
I know that was late last week or mid last week. That was a time sensitive issue. And I think it's important that the record reflect that you did communicate with the committee and polled us before you move forward with that. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
and I really appreciate everybody responding. It was a timely thing, and again, we had to make some tough calls, but it was nice to have everyone's participation and understanding because it was very last minute. 2 weeks ago, we got the direction to go after FEMA, and then a lot of new discoveries came up. Ms. Bates.
What was the 49 million you just mentioned?
The departmental requests.
Oh, okay.
I think that's the number that we've kind of it's down to now.
But it looks like very few of those will be FEMA
Correct.
eligible.
Correct. There's a few that they had some questions on, Ernst & Young had some questions on, but even those, I think the totals were not very large. So more to come.
Good try.
Yes. Okay. Other committee matters. This one is kind of a placeholder in case there's something that comes up after the agenda is posted or we forget to put it on here. I do have one under committee matters today. There is some discussion about altering our schedule to allow us more time to process all of the community support grant applications. Our goal is to get it onto the next county board agenda for March. In order for that to happen, there's a lot of other work that needs to take place. So we have our appeals window that doesn't close until February 15th. And we now have a meeting scheduled the very next day on the 16th. I can already tell you right now, we are not going to be in a position on the 16th to make any kind of determinations on award amounts. So we'll need some extra time. And the conversation we had yesterday was, the idea was proposed that our next meeting be held on March 1st. We have a March 2nd already scheduled, so we would just move that March 2nd to March 1st so that we still land before the next executive committee meeting. And we can make some decisions that we want to go to the county board at that time. So I just wanted to put that out there. If there are any objections to canceling the February 16th ARPA meeting and moving our March 2nd meeting to March 1st, in order to allow the firm and this committee more time to make some deliberations on award amounts and get that onto the March County Board agenda. So are there any questions first or objections? No? Okay. Well, then we will put those wheels in motion to cancel our meeting on the 16th and move the March 2nd to the March 1st position on the calendar.
What time?
What time? I don't think there's any meetings. There are any meetings that
There are
morning.
not, no.
So then we would just do the 9 a.m. slot for March 1st. And once we have all the information in, just to give you a little idea of the process, after the appeals window is closed and we get all the applications in, that information will be distributed to the committee to review, and we'll go through probably 2 rounds where everyone will get a spreadsheet, and you'll have all the information from the applicants, and you'll be asked to move numbers around to equal the total for each category, just like the Riverboat Grant Committee does. And we'll take an average of all of those suggested amounts from the committee. We'll look at that, send it back to you, and ask you to do one more round of changes, any changes that you would like to make at that point. And so then we have enough time, I think, to go through that process, 5 days for the first review, 5 days for the second review, and then we'll be ready to go on March 1st to vote on award totals for this program. Any questions or comments, concerns?
This is Martin, just confirming we're canceling February 16th.
Yes. And
Okay, thank you.
Yep. And then switching March 2nd to March 1st at 9 a.m.
Thank you.
Mr. Berman, I thought you were about to say something.
The process of where it goes and whether it goes to the finance committee or whatever.
Well, I mean, that's something we can have a conversation with the state's attorney. I did speak with Michelle Neerman, I think a couple months ago, because this question had come up. What is the proper committee flow for this committee? And the answer I was given was that the appropriate flow would be the ARP committee to executive to county board. So there was no indication that some might have to go to finance or not. But that is what the state's attorney gave me at that time for direction. So if you'd like to revisit that conversation, we can certainly all sit down and figure that out. That being said, if we were to make that change, we wouldn't be able to make our deadline for the March county board meeting on these applications. But just let me know if that's something you want to talk to state's attorney about. We can figure that out.
They say it's not necessary. I guess it's not necessary.
I think the question came up when you were making a decision of how much allocation was going to be. Was it the 5.23 or the 4.1 or 2? If that was going to go to finance, because that was going to do a direct impact upon future budget allocation for the county. So that's how I was looking at him saying, since this is allocation of funds, should it go through finance just to get the stamp of approval and then go to exec?
So that's a state's attorney question. And again,
Okay, why don't we just clarify?
Yeah, we can get that clarification.
That'd be wonderful.
So that if
Thanks.
there are some things that should go to finance, we will, but I was told that executive is
Okay.
proper, so. Any other questions or comments? Okay, so we are canceling the February 16th meeting, moving the March 2nd to March 1st at 9 a.m. Let's see, what else do we have? We have some resolutions, but for discussion, does anyone have anything else that I didn't cover that they're scratching their head or have questions on? I know we just went through a lot. All right, let's move on to new business. We have two resolutions. If I could get a motion and a second to discuss and potentially approve authorization to calculate and allocate state and local fiscal recovery funds for the provision of government services through the recoupment of lost revenue each allowable year during the American Rescue Plan Act period of performance.
Raz moves.
Raz moves.
Second.
8 seconds. I do see a scrivener's error. There's an extra "of" in this, but that's inconsequential. We can change that. Any questions or comments on this? This is the result of our conversation at our last meeting, and Mr. Leonard was, I would say, the spearhead of this conversation that led to this resolution. He wasn't able to make the meeting today, but he did indicate to me, oh, I'm so sorry. I forgot to stop sharing screen. My apologies.
Thank you.
It's in the agenda. Really? Okay. Well, allow me to. Okay, sorry if we didn't get you the updated agenda, Blair. I am going to share my screen just so that you guys can see the agenda or the resolution. Okay. So we have here. Again, this was the result of our conversation. Mr. Leonard, who was the main inspiration for this resolution, emailed me this morning, said he couldn't make it. He's out of town. He couldn't even zoom in, but he was in agreement with this draft in the form that it's in. He was involved in the conversation with the state's attorney's office and getting this put together. So I'd like to thank him for putting that extra work in. I can't take credit for this. So Mr. Leonard, thank you. And everyone else that wanted to go in this direction. Are there any questions or comments on this resolution? No, we have the state's attorney on the call. If you guys have any questions. Yeah, and go to the whereases. And the idea.
The motion, Martin moves.
We have a motion in a second. I believe Fraz and Bates. Any questions or comments?
Mr.
Oh, yeah,
Chairman,
sorry.
this is Alan.
Ms. Allen, go ahead.
When we received this money, it went into some fund so that we could hold the money. Is this moving it from whatever fund it was originally in into a different fund now? And are we doing that because that's what Mr. Onzik suggested was the right thing to do in order to keep control and keep track of the money?
Well, we have our main ARPA fund, and we did create a fund 356 for recoupment of lost revenue. And you can see it is mentioned right here in the now therefore be it resolved. So yes, we do have a separate fund for revenue recoupment, lost revenue money. So when it is calculated at the end of the fiscal year or sometime thereafter, the board votes on it and agrees, yes, we're going to accept such and such amount of money for lost revenue. And at that time, it will go into this fund.
Thanks for the clarification. I appreciate it.
Mhm. Any other questions,
So,
Madam Chair?
yeah, are we looking at then the growth rate that you're proposing is a straight 4.1 rather than the 5.2 eligible?
Yes, at the last committee meeting, the committee gave direction to go with the 4.1%.
The ARP committee did.
Yes.
I think that we want to read.
A microphone, Mr. Berman.
We want to read, I'm sorry. Berman, not being part of your committee. I think we want to revisit that 4.1 now that 5.2 is available. I think it needs to be discussed.
Well,
Mike,
again, this,
please.
I'm sorry. I think we need to revisit the 4.1 now that 5.2 is available to us. It was not when we made the decision to use 4.1. So I think we need to make that decision again. We need to go through it again.
Bates, please.
Ms. Bates?
I believe that 5.2 possibility was available to us when we made this decision, and we decided not to go with that, but to stick with the 4.1%. That was already discussed.
I don't recall a 5.2 being available at that time.
I
Yeah,
believe that was discussed at our last meeting.
At our last meeting, Mr. Berman, we discussed the final rule that has come out. We were operating under the interim final rule. Technically, we still are because the final rule takes effect, I think in a month or so. But in any case, the final rule says that we can go up to 5.2% in our calculation. Mr. Onzicht ran the numbers for us and showed that if we were to do that, that would mean about $83 million would go to revenue recoupment. And then if we were to do the full payroll reimbursement of $20 million, then we would actually be going over the $103 million. And I think that was the reason why this committee recommended we go with the 4.1%, simply because that 5.2 just brings the numbers out even further. And in the background context, our actual growth rate was somewhere more around 2.3 or 4, something like that. So even 4.1 is much higher than what our actual growth rate has been. So it's one of those, yes, we can do it, but should we? And this committee decided upon 4.1. So I think at this time, when it goes to county board, when it gets to county board, this will be going to executive committee next for next month. So we can have further discussions on if people would like to change that amount, we could amend the resolution as we need, but this committee recommended 4.1. Mr. Tepe, I see your hand is up, and then Mr. Brown.
Thank you. I just took it down.
You took a nap or you took it down?
I took it down.
Gotcha.
Feel like
Mr.
I'm in
Brown.
jeopardy trying to press the button at the right time. May I speak? This is John Martin. May I speak?
Brown and then Martin.
Brown speaking here. Yeah, this was discussed at the last ARP committee, a lot of conversation on it actually. And Mr. Leonard made the motion to go with the 4.1. And I think that was basically based on the fact that, as you said, Mr. Chairman, if we went with the 5.2, I believe we were oversubscribed by like $18 million. So it made no sense to go to the 5.2. There's not that much money there. So 4.1 was what was decided on.
I agree.
I agree.
Any other questions or comments before we call for the roll? Okay, Jenny, if you could please.
Bates,
Would you come back to me, please?
oh, you want me to skip over? Okay, sorry.
Come back.
Yes. And I'll come back. Brown,
Yes.
Franz,
Yes.
Gums,
Yes.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Leonard absent, Martin,
Martin, yes.
Strothman,
Strathman, yes.
Molina,
Molina, yes.
Tepe,
Tepe, yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
and Bates.
Bates, yes.
Motion carried 10-0.
Okay, thank you. And so that will go on to next month's executive committee agenda and then on to the full county board. Again, thank you to Mr. Leonard for helping us put that together. Next resolution, authorizing the execution of community support grant agreements. Before I ask for a motion a second, let me just say this is something that came up very recently with the state's attorney and realized we needed to create an authorization to allow Madam Chair to sign the award agreements for the Big Six organizations, as we call them, in the mental health 1 category. So this is our way to speed up the process. Once she has that authority, she will be able to sign off on any reimbursements that these organizations apply for. So this one, and I spoke with Madam Chair and some of you, this will be going right to county board from here. This is a matter of expediting the process, as the entire county board has expressed its will to do so, and especially in relation to these 6 organizations in the mental health 1 category. So if there are any questions, comments, or concerns.
Can you bring that up on the screen, please?
Oh, yes, my apologies. I keep forgetting I'm sharing screen. And actually, I should ask first for a motion in a second now so that we can go into
Molina
discussion.
seconds.
Brown moves, Molina seconds. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Madam Chair?
Thank you. I would like to see what these grant applications are going to be providing before I sign it. I think that's important for the committee, and I did ask for that, just so we can get a quick spreadsheet, very much like what you had put together before. I see it here. I see the amount, but I don't know what they're doing.
So the only things that we approved for this category were sign-on and retention bonuses. So those are the kinds of expenses that they would qualify for, as well as PPE and any sort of modifications to their operation. So at this time, and I believe Michael Isaacson, he sent me some information. I forgot to pull that up. But I think they all agreed on to be non-competitive with each other. They all agreed on the amounts that they would give for these bonuses.
But I think it's important for the entire committee and the board, before I go ahead and sign this, to have an understanding of what this fund is going to go to, and just to see what it is.
Mm-hmm. Well, I will send everyone the information that I have today.
And Peter, it just has to be summary statements. It doesn't have to be the full-blown grant application.
Yes, I understand. Do you want to pull this up on the screen?
I'd have to find it, and I'll send it out to everyone. But it is very simple. It is because we did define it so closely, so there's not much complexity to it at all.
I mean, it's one organization sign-up bonus $5,000, is another one $10,000.
Oh no, they've all agreed on the amounts.
But that's what we need to see.
Okay. You know what? If you want to see it right now, let me stop sharing screen and I'll pull it up. It's fine. You don't need to see it now.
I would suggest that this committee needs to see it, and the full board needs to see it.
Okay. Well, I will send that out today. I apologize for forgetting to bring that up here. But going back to the resolution, any other questions, comments, or concerns?
Should that go as an amendment to that resolution?
An amendment?
An attachment?
An attachment. I don't know. The state's attorney didn't indicate that we would need that. We could, I suppose we could add that on for the full county board vote, for the full county board agenda. We could put that in there. It's not instrumental to the resolution and the decision itself. It's just additional information. Yeah. So I don't, unless state's attorney has an objection, I don't see why we couldn't just include that information, and we'll get that updated.
I'm sure our public would be interested in knowing what that is too.
Yeah. Okay, anything else before we vote? All right, clerk, please call the roll.
Bates,
Bates, yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Froz,
I'm sorry, yes.
Gums,
Gums is a yes. Sorry about that.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Leonard, absent. Martin,
Martin, yes.
Molina,
Molina, yes.
Strathman,
Strathman, yes.
Tepe,
Happy, yes.
and Sanchez.
Sanchez, yes.
Motion carried 10-0.
All right, so that will be going on to the county board agenda next week. And once approved, then we will be able to start giving those reimbursements out to the big 6 entities. It's a little different than some of our other grant categories. These are very limited, so they don't have a lot to be reimbursed for right now. We're not going to be handing them $333,000 next week, but we will be supplying this money to them that is very much needed and is going to help do a lot of good work in the community. So thank you to everyone for supporting this and bringing it to the board. All right, that being said, we have old business. Anyone have anything to bring up under old business? Mr. Frost?
I guess this is old business going back to the onset.
Is your mic on? Yeah.
This is old business going back to the onset of today's meeting, but I would ask that Mr. Peters and maybe the Ernst & Young look at the situation we discussed about the 4 million that we've allotted versus the 7.3 something that has been asked for, and what the best route or avenue to try and fulfill those other needs. Do we have to do a second round, or can we fund them with the 4 million and then keep the other million on a list for when we can pass a resolution to increase that? So I'd just like to know what they recommend the process would be.
We already had that discussion with state's attorneys, so we do know the process, and the conversation was born of the fact that the final rule included language that determined that 50C19s will be included, because the interim rule only spoke to 501c3s. So they had feedback and determined that 501c19s, which are veteran service organizations that drive veterans to the mental health community. We spoke about how, if at all, we could have captured that with the portal being open, and state's attorney determined that we could extend the portal, but it would have required a new resolution because the resolution specifically called out 501c3s. So
Okay. I
the
guess
resolution would be.
I'm just thinking in
required
terms of the total amount. You know, it was definitely in my recollection that we set aside 4. I think it went up from 3 to 4, but with the understanding that we'd be increasing that, and that was just something to put out fires with, and then fully fund additional asks later. So I would like to fund as much as that 7.345 million that was requested.
Without having another resolution to open it up to the 19's 501c19. So that would be additional funds beyond that primary list that we've just received.
If we were to expand it to include those types of organizations or to increase the amount, we would need to do an amendment to the original resolution that authorized the $4 million and what it was for. So as I said before, we'll look into it. We'll see what our options are and get in touch with everyone to see if they want to do that. But my understanding is that might drag us out another month before we can make those awards, because we would have to first get that award amount increased by the county board, and then we would have to go through the process of determining things, because we might find some of these applications really don't even qualify for the category that they're in. We might find that they're an organization asking for $100,000 that has never managed more than 10,000. There's still discovery to occur.
Yeah, I'm not asking to expand it in any way or expand the criteria. I guess I'm just looking that I know that we have asks that exceed the 4 million, and if we can clarify that they qualify, I would like to fund as many of those as possible.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Brown.
Drew, I agree with you, but we have to continue to remember that we got to look at the big picture here. We've got $40-some million worth of internal requests. And as we make decisions like what you're talking about, adding another $3 or $4 million to the $4 million that's been approved, we have to remember what that does to the other requests that we haven't really yet considered.
Yeah, I understand that. And I've been a big proponent of the internal requests, and I believe that should be our main focus. But, when you're talking 3.45 million out of 103 million, I would like to, I fully expected that the community asks would be greater than what they were. And I think we're well within a range to fund them and also fund the majority of our internal asks, especially when we just heard today that some of those internal asks won't be qualified. So I would just like to talk about that at our next meeting, possibly.
Yeah, absolutely. Madam Chair.
That was a qualification for FEMA, not qualified for this program.
So I guess that means some of those asks may be diverted towards FEMA, which may reduce that number.
By a little bit.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it was 2 million or something like that.
So
It's
we're
not
halfway
nothing.
there then.
It's not nothing. And, you know, another way of looking at the FEMA situation is whenever we do get reimbursement, assuming that we do, that's money that won't be spent out of the ARP fund that could potentially go to a round 2 for this type of program or something else, department request, whatever it is that the county.
I just think when the dust settles on this program, you know, for us to say that we funded just about all the asks and it was less than 7% or 7.5% of what we got, 7% actually. You know, so I would just like to work towards that. And I think most people remember that 4 million was just a first blush and that we fully expected to raise it somewhat. So thank you.
Yep, thank you.
I agree with that.
Well, I think we all agree with that. And the original ask from this, from the board was 5.
Yeah,
it was-
and we thought that was too low.
Yeah, we all thought, and that was a starting point. So I agree, but just clarification. The list that we've just been given, no, for the $7.3 million minus the $2 million, because that was agreed upon. These are raw numbers. They have not been vetted yet.
Correct.
So
Some have, but not on this list.
not on this list. The big 6 have been vetted.
Yeah.
We're good with that. But all the other organizations, to your point, they may have a $50,000 a year budget and they're asking for $28 million to fund their programs. So when will we get the list after it's vetted? When will Ernst & Young be able to do that and make recommendation about how much the organization should truly be funded by?
So we do have the appeals window open until February 15th. So that would be the 16th would be the first day that I would say that would be even possible to have a completed list. It's very possible we don't get any more appeals in and everything can be processed and put out very early before the 16th if that occurs. If we realize no one is going to appeal the ones that were rejected, you know, there's a lot of maybes, but I would say the safe answer would be February 16th would be the first date that information would be able to go out. And we go through the process of making recommendations.
Perhaps I'm not clear. You've got applications that have already been submitted and are not under appeal. Can Ernst & Young go through their budget now, start working on that? Because there's a lot of applications and start defining, you asked for $50,000, but according to the criteria set forth with your budget, you're only actually qualified for 10,000.
So yeah, we'll speak with Ernst & Young because we did not capture that piece of information on our main application portal, how much their annual budget is.
No.
That is something that we would need to.
And it would be
follow up.
towards specific program. It's not to fund their executive director or their finance director.
Oh, yeah. We have those eligible uses defined. So they understand if they apply for something that's ineligible, they're going to get.
Oh, no, but the budget for those eligible programs has been included, correct?
The budget for.
Or the program that they're asking money for.
Yeah, there was a budget table portion of the
But
application. But it's not their organization's annual budget. Yeah.
Oh, okay, so that probably you need to obtain.
Yeah, and I do think that would be good information to have for
I don't,
discerning.
Jared, I don't think that's been something Ernst & Young has been charged to do. They're going to review the applicants for the eligibility, not dig into depth of, for example, if one agency applies for $25,000, I understand what Madam Chair is saying. Maybe they've only got a $25,000 a year budget, but another one might be applying for $25,000 and they got a $5 million a year budget. That's not something Ernst & Young has been charged to do, and I'm not sure that I wouldn't know how you could go about that.
Yeah, I don't have the answer. That's why we're going to have to just follow up with the team and see what our options are in that regard, because it wasn't a part of the application process here, asking them what their organization's annual. So we will find out. we will get to the bottom of that and make sure that Ernst & Young is able to do that and
Yeah.
get that
Thank you.
information.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We want to make sure that the programs we fund are able to be sustained and they're able to follow through with them.
Yeah.
And having resources and staff to be able to do that is critical to make sure that the programs are well managed and actually they can do exactly what they want to do.
And I do recall in conversation with Ernst & Young, they do submit each application to risk assessment. So that's probably gonna be my first question is, what does that risk assessment look like for each of these applications? And then how can we potentially get this information put in there as well and included? It may be just as simple as sending an email to each application. Hey, please send us your organization's annual budget or your, if you have a financial statement or something like that. Very simple.
Annual audit.
Yeah, an annual audit, something as simple as possible to just give us that information as we go through our decision-making process. Because I think it is something relevant for us all to consider. Maybe not be the most important piece of information, but I think one that is important. So yeah, I would agree. Okay, if there's nothing else that anyone would like to bring up to this committee, we have no need
I
for
move we
executive session.
adjourn.
Mr.
The
Kenyon.
masks are on over there.
Yeah.
They're ready to
Mr.
go.
Kenyon has moved to adjourn surprisingly. Can I get a second?
Second.
Mr. Brown seconds. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for being here and stay safe.